The 16th season of Mountain West men's basketball tips off this Friday. And once again, we're pleased to be joined by national basketball analyst Andy Glockner to talk about not only the preseason hype, but to talk about the season throughout the entire Mountain West schedule. But let's start with the preseason media poll, Andy. Who was right where they needed to be? Who might be a little bit high? Who might be a little bit too low? San Diego State was the overwhelming favorite. Got 34 of the 35 first-place votes.
First off, we need to sniff out who was the Boise State voter. I mean, I think that's, this is like the who shot JR thing of the Mountain West this year. San Diego State, assumedly, was going to be the favorite and overwhelmingly so, and I think that's right. I think we are in a situation this year, though, where 2 through 7, I really think you could have gone in a lot of different directions here. So when we talk about over or underrated in the poll, the voting was the totals were so similar from 2 through 5 that I'm going to tell you, I thought Colorado State was too low. I thought they ended up 5th in the poll. I would have had them 2nd. I know a lot of people in the league that had them 2nd. So I'm curious as to what happened with the rest of the voters here. But they were so little difference between 2nd and 5th, it's hard to say that they're underrated. If you're going to tell me at the end of the season that they're going to finish higher or lower than 5th, though, I would take higher than 5th for Colorado State. In the same vein, I thought Boise State was going to come in this year and be a little bit underrated because of the way they struggled last year when everybody, except this preview show, overrated them coming off the NCAA tournament appearance. I thought they were going to hit a little bit of a glass ceiling. They did. They had some bad luck in close games in the league play last year. Ended up struggling a little bit more than everybody thought. I thought they were going to be a little bit underrated coming into this year, and now they're sort of overly over-underrated. Like, I don't even know what the phrase would be. They ended up 2nd in a poll, mostly because I think people looked at this and said, well, we know what they have coming back, and we don't know what anybody else has coming back, so we're just going to stick them 2nd. I think that's probably a little aggressive.
A lot like there's parity in the poll from the team standpoint. There's parity in the individual standpoint in the race for the all-conference team. First team all-conference, Larry Nance Jr. from Wyoming, Anthony Drimmick from Boise State, Daniel Bejarano from Colorado State, Winston Shepard, and Dwayne Poley from San Diego State. Do you agree with those 5, or was there someone that you think belongs in that 5?
I think they're perfectly reasonable choices. I think they come with some questions. I think Larry Nance being the player of the year, if Larry Nance is the player he was last November and December, Larry Nance should be the player of the year in the league. We don't know. Larry Nance has to come back from a serious knee injury, and that doesn't often go 100% well the first year for an athletic 6'8" forward that relies on that type of dynamicism. So, I'm waiting to see on that. San Diego State is going to have star players. We don't know if it's going to be Poley. We don't know if it's going to be, it could be one of the point guards that emerges. Matt Shrigley could emerge and shoot lights out. It could be one of their other 18, big, 6'11" types in the front court. Same thing with Colorado State. I mean, I think you could go with Bejarano. You could certainly look at J.J. Avila. You could look at one of their newcomers like a Stanton Kidd. He might be the most important player on that team this year from what he was providing in practice last year to what he can add to their mix this year. So I think these are perfectly reasonable choices, but as the season goes along, we're going to see who's going to be 1st, 2nd, 3rd. UNLV is a big wild card. A guy like Rashad Vaughn, a freshman, could emerge as well. I know he was picked as the freshman of the year, certainly could end up as an all-league player as well. So I think they're reasonable picks, but I think the league is good enough this year that there are going to be a lot more candidates than that.
Let's dive a little bit deeper into the team. San Diego State picked number 1. They're nationally ranked, expectations high on the Mesa, but Steve Fisher has been very happy with the way that his young team has handled the hype.
You got to have a bit of an ego to do anything, and they've got that, but they don't have an ego to the point where they think the world owes them a living, or they're not appreciative when people recognize them. They don't take it as a burden, and they've been really good at how they've handled themselves around campus, the community, and on the basketball court.
As they enter this season, they're without the Mountain West Player of the Year in Xavier Thames. How far can this team go, and what are the keys to its success?
I think those questions are interrelated. I think how they can replace Xavier Thames, and they're not going to replace Xavier Thames. Xavier Thames, we banged on about this show last year about how good a season he had. I don't know that the average basketball fan realizes how good he was offensively for a team that frankly was not very good offensively. San Diego State made its rep last year on defense. San Diego State is going to make its rep this year on defense, except they don't have Xavier Thames to bail them out repeatedly on offense. He was maybe their best perimeter shooter. He was their big shot taker. He was their orchestrator. He was their toughest guy on the perimeter. He was their leader. He was the guy with so many games of experience. And now you're turning it over either to a freshman or to Akil Quinn, and they all have their, their good qualities. We've heard good things about Kevin Zabo. We've heard good things about Trey Kell in preseason. Obviously, Quinn has been there. They all provide a different dynamic, but they're not Xavier Thames, and this is a team that badly needed Xavier Thames last season. So take Thames out. Who's taking your shots this year? Who is your ball handler that's orchestrating? Who is creating these opportunities in the half court for you? San Diego State's going to get out and run, and they're going to score in transition when applicable. They're going to get putbacks on the offensive end because, frankly, they're going to miss a lot of shots and they're athletic enough to get it. Where they're going to get their primary offense from is, to me, the big question. They're going to be good enough to overwhelm a lot of teams defensively. But when you're talking about not just the Mountain West, which will be a good league this year, but nationally and a national ranked team, when they go into these non-conference games against teams, where is that scoring going to come from? And I think it's going to be interesting to see how early it comes. Are they going to have it in November, or is this going to come in January or February as they sort out their point guard problem?
You asked the question, where does the offense come from? We know where the offense is going to come from in Boise. Anthony Drimmick and Derek Marks, both already top 10 in school history in scoring. They got an entire season ahead of them. Are they good enough as a tandem to carry this team? Because as you know, they lost a big postman in Watkins. They lost the glue guy in Aloriaga. It is the tandem of Marks and Drimmick good enough to carry this team to where they want to go?
That's the question as to why we were picking them second. What you know in this case is very good. Marks has some flaws, but is a very good basketball player. Drimmick, likewise, has different flaws from Marks, but they're very compatible, the two of them. They work well together. Marks' strengths are kind of Drimmick's weaknesses and vice versa. I think they're very good. If they can find a little bit of a better rhythm where the shot distribution is a little bit more even, where they're comfortable with the 1A, 1B thing down the stretch of games. Again, they lost a lot of close games last year, and they lost some of those close games because, frankly, they didn't get very good shots down the stretch. They got to be better than that. And the other question you mentioned, can they replace Ryan Watkins? They have 3 or 4 options to replace him, and we're going to see very quickly whether Watkins was just that good, especially as a rebounder in the 1-in, 4-out type stuff that Boise likes to run, or whether he was just a replaceable cog, and whether it's Nick Duncan or somebody else could go in there and basically provide that same type of rebounding, because frankly nobody else does it on that team. So I'm intrigued to see Boise this year. Yes, they do have the offensive firepower. Yes, I do think they will be better than next year. I'm just not sure that they're the second best team right now. Moving
on to the defending Mountain West Tournament champions, New Mexico. They lost the big 3. Kendall Williams, Cam Bairstow, Alex Kirk. You don't lose those guys without losing something larger than just those 3 players. This is Hugh Greenwood's team right now. He's the senior leader. Coach Neal has already said that this team will be much different without that trio than they were last year.
This year we're going to have to play a little bit faster to create open opportunities for us on the offensive end, because we don't have those 2 guys that can really score inside, and those guys were really versatile. And then you had a great playmaker in Kendall Williams that could do a lot of great things and make plays for everybody. I think this team will play a lot more players. I think we'll play a little bit differently. I think everybody will get a chance to try to prove that they can play at this level.
Certainly offensively things are going to be different. What other changes do you envision with this team with Greenwood at the control, without Williams, Bairstow, and Kirk?
We're entering the Mountain West heresy zone here, because I don't see where this team is going to be all that good. Now, not that good for New Mexico is very good for other programs, but you're losing 50 points of scoring between the 3 guys you mentioned. More importantly, you're changing your entire approach as how they played the last season and a half. Ever since they put Cameron Bairstow in the lineup to go with Kirk, I think it was at Wyoming 2 seasons ago, played the last season and a half essentially with 2 very dominant bigs in very different ways too, inside out. Bairstow's emergence last year, the way he added a face-up game to his dominant inside presence. Look, we don't know who's going to emerge like that this year. Nobody expected Cam Bairstow to go for 20 and 9 a game or whatever it was last season. But you're missing both of those bigs, and you're missing your point guard. I mean, these are major, well, I know Hugh Greenwood, de facto point guard, but you know what I'm saying. They lose Kendall Williams. Now you have a team that really is comprised of guards and wings. I don't know where they're going to get their quality or depth from inside. I don't know how they're going to change and adapt their offense such that it goes through Hugh Greenwood, such that Cullen Neal will now have to make a bunch of shots, such that Deshaun Delaney now has to step up. I mean, you're talking about guys that averaged 6-7 points a game last year that now are going to have to average 15, 16, 17 points a game. That's a very difficult transition, and that doesn't even talk about the defensive side of the ball where you're lacking the same type of rim presence that you had last year potentially. I know the Pit is a Pit. I know they're going to win their home games. I know New Mexico does it every year regardless of their personnel. But when I'm looking around this league, man, they finished third in the poll. I might take under on that, and not with a lot of my own money, but if you were to tell me which way I wanted to go, I think this could be a struggle for them for a while until they figure out some of the new roles.
One team that knows that position failed to live up to expectations was UNLV last year. They lost a lot of firepower from last year as well. Jelon Kendrick is the leading scorer, returning 6.3 points per game. The Runnin' Rebels did add a point guard from the University of San Francisco, a transfer. His name is Cody Doolin, a true point guard who looks to pass first.
I just try to make the right play every time, whether that's passing the ball or taking the shot myself. And I think if you just focus on doing what's best for the team and just trying to make the correct play every time, the rest will take care of itself.
Dave Rice has a team full of transfers and full of five-star recruited freshmen on this team, including Rashad Vaughn, who's the preseason freshman of the year for the Runnin' Rebels in the Mountain West. What's the biggest challenge for Dave Rice with this team?
I think he's facing a ton of challenges, and it starts with creating, and they have an identity, but they did not have an identity that really threatened anybody in the last couple of years. And a lot of it ties into the fact that they didn't have quality point guard play. They had guys playing point guard. They did not have a point guard. So the orchestration, especially in half court, wasn't good. You had guys with kind of selfish agendas. You had a lack of chemistry. You've had the third year in a row of a massive roster turnover here. Personnel's never been an issue with UNLV. They had the #1 draft pick in the NBA draft a couple of years ago. I mean, this is not like they're not getting talent. Yes, they have new talent this year. Yes, now Cody Doolin, the transfer from San Francisco, is going to, hopefully, provide that pass-first orchestrating presence at point guard that they have not had. But there are still questions. You're relying on a freshman scorer in Rashad Vaughn. You're relying on a freshman in Good Luck Okonoba to protect the rim for you. If it's not going to be Chris Wood, it's going to be a freshman. Freshman rim protection doesn't work all that well unless you're Anthony Davis. There's so many questions about this UNLV team. Can they come together cohesively? Can they reestablish their home court advantage? They've been beaten at the MAC more than you would expect the last couple of years. So, you talk about the good home court advantages in the league. That used to be one of them. Now teams think they can go in there and get a win. Nevada went in there last year and handled them. So I have a lot of questions about what's going on. The one thing I do like is they finally got a point guard in place, and they're bringing in sort of their own freshman talent that hopefully will be there for more than 1 year. So rather than building every year through transfers, they're going to continue to build, hopefully, if it's not 4-year players, at least maybe 2-year players to get a little bit more consistency.
On the high plains of Laramie, Wyoming, the big man back on campus, Larry Nance Jr., once again going to lead the Cowboys after he missed the second half of the conference season with a knee injury. Nance told me during the offseason that getting a chance to watch from afar, just watch and take in basketball, including spending time at the Nike Big Man Camp, has made him a smarter player.
It was awesome being around guys of such a high level of the NBA, even higher college levels, and it was great to just kind of compare notes with them as to what our mindset is during the game or whatever it may be.
The Cowboys were one of the top teams in the conference last year with him in the lineup. Can they pick up where they left off, say, in January when he was a dominant force in the Mountain West for the Cowboys?
Only he's going to know where he is at health-wise. And we're not going to know as a viewing public until we see a number of games and see whether A, he's fully healthy, and B, whether he thinks he's fully healthy. There's a mental component to this too, where you're on the court 9-10 months after you tore your knee, you're still not 100% sure you're that explosive guy, and hopefully his subconscious will take over, and then he'll make some plays, and then he'll realize he's okay. We don't know when that's going to happen. It may happen in November. It may not happen until league play. It may not happen all season. Knee injuries are just finicky that way, and it goes to the individual to kind of work their way through it, both with the rehab and also with the mental disposition. And we don't have to project the impact of Larry Nance. We saw what the impact of having Larry Nance was last season. This Wyoming team is full of really good complementary guys built around the one-star system that they have in Larry Nance on both ends of the floor. And they have some good pieces if Larry Nance is 100% healthy. And the big thing that we talked about with kind of the flux at the top of the league, this season for a fully healthy Larry Nance in Wyoming is tailor-made for them to make a run. With all of the questions at the other good teams in the league, you know, you get into Wyoming, you got to go up to Laramie on a Wednesday night and play at 9 o'clock. It's, you know, minus 30 degrees and spooky up there. And, you know, it's awesome. I mean, it's a great environment to play in, but it's obviously not very easy to get to. It's a tough trip, 7,000 plus foot altitude, with a very good team that plays a style that just sucks you into it. They were the only team in the league last year. Every other team in the league was 62, 63 possessions in league play. Wyoming was about 56. They drag you into their muck. They play very precisely. They don't try to offensive rebound. They don't give you transition baskets, and they rely on their star and then guys like Riley Grabo and Josh Adams and Derek Cook to supplement what Larry Nance is going to give them, and they'll try to beat you 58-54, and they're very good at it. If Larry Nance is healthy, this is not, in my mind, just a top 4, top 5 team. This is a team that could make a shock run. I don't know if they're ultimately over 18 games as good as San Diego State, but could finish top 2 or top 3 in the league.
You mentioned you thought Colorado State may be a little bit underrated in the poll. The teams that were picked in the bottom half of the league, Fresno State, Nevada, Air Force, Utah State, and San Jose State. Last year we saw Nevada creep up and really make a run to the top. Which of those teams is primed to make a run near the top, picked right now at the bottom?
It's putting Colorado State aside for a second, because I do think they're going to be one of the better teams. I think you have to look at Fresno. I think that's a team that the last 2 seasons, there's been some hope there, and I really like what Rodney Terry has done. They've turned over some personnel. Obviously, they've had some departures and some injury issues with Braden Anderson last year. They now have another transfer coming in. They had success with Cesar Guerrero last year as a transfer. Now they have Julian Lewis coming in from Texas. They've got Paul Watson, who I really, really like, especially when they play small ball and they play him at the 4. He's a big problem at the 4 in this league. So I like a lot of what they're doing. What's happened the last couple of years is they've started off 1-6 and 1-7 in the league. And there's no way to dig out of that, and then you end up as a 7 or 8 seed, and then you play the best team in the league in the quarterfinals, and it's a very hard way to get through the conference tournament. And this year, their schedule starts off, I'd have to double check, I think it's with San Diego State and New Mexico, or UNLV. They play 2 very difficult games right off the bat. This is a confidence thing for Fresno State. This is a year that I think they can break through and win some games. I think they have the talent to do it, and they have the coach to do it. And ultimately, if they start winning games, they'll have the home court environment to do it. I think people will buy in there. They just can't get off to another 1-3, 1-4 start, and I think that's the key with Fresno. But if you're looking for a sleeper, I think that's the team I would pick.
There's always great games in the Mountain West come down at the end. It's usually the Titanic games, heavyweight versus heavyweight. What are the 2 games that you're looking forward to most inside conference play in the Mountain West?
I think you're always looking at New Mexico, San Diego State. I think, there's obvious good and bad will between the 2 fan bases there. Obviously, the regular season was decided last year, and then New Mexico went and won the tournament in Vegas. They are always jousting for sort of league supremacy here ever since Steve Fisher has brought San Diego State sort of up to that pedestal. But there are a bunch of ways you could go doing it. If you like style contrast, you would like Boise, Wyoming. If you like all offense, you like UNLV, Boise. If you like coaching, you like Colorado State, Wyoming. There are a lot of different really interesting matchups, and one team that we didn't really touch on that, has a lot of their guys back that I think will be a wrench in some teams' plans too is Air Force, and I like watching them play as well. You go to Clune, that's not an easy game. San Diego State struggles there almost every time they go. So I think there are a lot of games to watch, but the headliners are obviously great. I would love to watch more Boise UNLV though. I'm not all offense, but those games should be fun.
Yeah, every one of these teams all shooting to get to the big dance in March. Yeah. Who are the teams out of the Mountain West? You nailed it last year. Who are the teams this year that will be dancing when they pick the bracket?
Yeah, that was unfortunate last year because we were pretty depressive on our expectations, and the non-conference season really panned that out, and the league ended up with only 2. I think this will be closer to the year before. I don't think this league will get 5, but I think it probably is shading closer to a chance of 4. I think 3 will go. I think San Diego State will go, and I think the league will be strong enough that whoever finishes 2nd and 3rd, barring some UNLV-type non-conference problems last year where they really eliminated themselves realistically before the league season even. I think the league will carry 2 or 3 teams like that, and then maybe you get a mystery champion in as well. So I would say I feel pretty good about 3, and I think the league probably could sneak a 4th.
Andy, I always appreciate the insight. Andy Glockner will join us each week during conference play starting in January. For Andy Glockner, I'm Jesse Kurtz. Get ready for some exciting basketball in the Mountain West.